Noble Sentiments for an Exile is an anthology of meditations on language, travel and spirituality. It was compiled over a period of 10 years of travel in Russia, Scandinavia and the former Soviet republics. At the heart of this iconic collection lies the poetic memory that lives on through my acoustic experience of these places. The book opens with a lyrical essay that charts the anonymous traveller's quest to animate the soundscape of words' inner forms, the chain of sensory impressions that inform the memory and perhaps even the soul. His travels show him a world that has been dissolved in the primacy of sound and a sacred that acts as a liberation of the senses. The traveller was once told that language is the bridge between the material world and the intimate life tied up in our souls. Continuous with essence, language should make this inner world accessible, he had heard. He imagined an inner spirit that can still locate this forgotten traditional cosmos to be one comprising fleeting visions of wild places that occasionally resurface in one's memory. Bewildering exteriority, fragments of poetry and whispers of the sacred. The sacred and the profane, the public and the private, the extraordinary and the mundane. Sometimes it is at such experiential junctions where the force of language can still be felt. These were the kind of accounts that he heard on his journeys. He was also told that when we discover the sacred, we hear words that are still alive, not disfigured and frozen. Listening to the sounds of these words, we in turn feel alive as their different sounds and impressions reverberate within us in unique ways. And when there is only a voice, and it is amplified in the near silence of the night, the traveller's verbal consciousness is electrified. A door to another realm stands ajar. Wishing to push the door open and enter the palace of transcendence, the traveller keeps wandering until he uncovers the spiritual speech acts and the intrinsic dignity of language. The traveller traces the essence of consciousness, and he follows the paths where the voices echo in his dreams. Oh, the life of the mind! Despite societies defining and redefining themselves without this voice, the signifier of the Christian spirit, the traveller still makes language, of course. He is constantly restyling it, but he no longer listens to it. Discourse has been sanitized, and the tongue is no longer sanctified by words alone. The language the traveller loves has little communicative value. Its appeal is acoustic and sensorial, but seldom semantic. When the sounds become meaningful, attention to the voice is often distracted and deprioritized. The pleasure afforded by the words of languages and their component sounds can be sensual, but it is the voice that is the signifier of re-enchantment. Re-enchantment, that was surely the traveller's quest? From all the conversations he had overheard in crowded train carriages and noisy bazaars, the traveller knew, however, that this re-enchantment and creativity is lost as soon as he opens his mouth. He wanted to ungag himself from the words already spoken. The traveller was anxious not to lose sight of the inner form of language, for then poetry would become prose. He wanted to hear the voice of the word. He could hear the working of the spirit in those monosyllabic words such as God and love sing to him. It is the consciousness of this inner form that makes words poetry, a shepherd who travelled with the wind once told him. The inner form is what makes the content. When the word loses its inner form, or when the inner form no longer suggests itself to the speaker or listener, the word loses its symbolic meaning. It turns into a concept, just a plain old concept that doesn't know the oblique life. For the traveller that knows the desert and the caravan routes, there might also be the appeal of the obsolete, a retreat to the archaic. A word that is very seldom heard brings with it some kind of auditory sensation. Just listen to the camel drivers. They speak, and the inheritance of these words and idioms flows forth. And a voice is not just noise, it is a phenomenological presence. What is more, the voice is transcendental. It transcends the body like some kind of sonic shadow. The traveller knows better than most that in order to feel a sense of being at home, there requires a journey of homecoming, and that itself can too be transcendental. Just go to a railway station and look at the faces of all the people that have been someplace else. And the traveller had also heard about sacred languages and the canonical books. If there is a language of gods and a language of men, then there is also the sacred liturgical language which acts as a conduit between the two. The sacred language branches off into the distant past through the cathedrals of the traveller's mind. And on the road, the traveller's senses are wide open and his creative memory becomes his epic faculty. He wants to chronicle all that floats past him. Object to any instrumentalist concept of language, a blind Bedouin scholar had once told the traveller. He could still hear those words being mumbled in the corner of his mind. Language should linger in the memory. It is more than expression in the form of words, more than the means of verbalizing all those rationalities that belong to no one. And so his journey was a pilgrimage into the far boundaries of speech, the potency of language, the world of silence, their dialectical tongue, a journey to escape the promiscuity of words and actions, a wandering to the places where the fabrics that bind the worshipper to his past can be seen. Silence, or you can call it systems of signification if you like. The traveller could find peace in this kind of opulent silence, the silence that emerges from the pitter-patter of rain. The weary traveller negotiates the shady area between the intelligible and the non-intelligible, and this is sometimes the locus for the most sensuous language, the flame of life. In these shady areas, the traveller seeks to embrace the words that have gone before him. And what are these words? They are incarnate sensualities. And so the traveller had come to a city of golden domes and bronze statues. His head is full of words. Under squadrons of clouds and on streets lined with golden maples, drugged by autumn, he walks towards his rejoicing conscience with mutilated memory, closes the door of the church and shuts out the vexations of the ordinary world. The miracle of time having stood still. It was the traveller who always sought to eke out these ancient places of worship. The traveller was never modern, and the traveller wasn't just going from place to place. No, this was moreover an interior journey to make straight his paths. A sort of spiritual connecting the dots in that world of incorporeal desires as he sought to be adorned with grace and catch a glimmer of salvation. He wanted to be in covenant with God, and at the heart of his contemplative journey was a dialogue with God, and so he sought out places where he could sprawl out his soul. Stand amongst the anointed pilgrims cowled in headscarves. Their abstention is noble and lofty, he liked to remind himself. They are the servants of God and wait humbly upon the Lord's will. Their souls progress in sanctity. Tied with the fetters of human affairs, when the traveller comes here, he is attracted to what lies above. The incense drifts across the temple and the sound of the priest's voice becomes even more penetrating as one of his senses becomes obscured. The words ricochet off the ascetic walls of the palace of believers. The concealed voices from behind the iconostasis acquire features of an autonomous object. Philology pours forth, organizing all the immutable morality. Deacons stumble over ciphered words in ancient books. The traveller's consciousness strays. The link between voice and subjectivity is severed, and he is left searching for the interiority of words. Once the voice is apparently detached from the body, it assumes a special authority. It is as if language has an independent existence, as if the words are descending from the heavens. The traveller sought to embrace this ambiguity, for he thought this explained why chanting was so alluring. He warmed to its liminality, its in-betweenness, the fact that it is neither quite singing nor talking. Chanting was for the traveller a kind of spiritual agency, a means of divine rapprochement. And what are the associations of a chanting voice that is always testing the boundaries between speech and music, the traveller wondered. The sounding and the resounding, the blurring of cause and effect, the Byzantine vocalization of the sacred that somehow forms a moment of existence. A sense of timelessness as the traveller waits for the sage to appear. A reminder that language is always chasing reality. A reminder to the traveller that we still don't understand the impact of language on our spiritual estate. With chanting, there is a sense that God hovers above the creation of words, for he breathes life into man. The traveller went looking for God, looking for signification or at least another dimension of being. He was hoping to find a language, an erudition of sensuousness or a way of speaking that would show him a transcendental realm. He fancied a liturgical language could direct the believer towards a spiritual consciousness, some kind of sublime detachment. He followed the paths of ritual language that led to a heightened poetic function, for it told the traveller the circumstances under which God must be present. It is ritual that shapes poetics and inspires devotion, or so the traveller thought. Vaguely aware of this, the traveller fumbles in the dark, looking for words that might index divinity. The traveller likes to escape from the oceanic rubble of the ordinary and return to those places where the sounds of words confer their allegorical power, where he can find life in its fullness. He searches for the impossible amidst the forgotten lands where they still harvest frankincense and myrrh. Shadows fly past him. He understands how the profusion of things has conspired to conceal the erosion of belief systems and the scarcity of ideas. To break from the silent procession of the days, he takes himself to the nowheres, where the relationship between form and meaning is symbiotic as well as semiotic. He wants to rediscover the living force of words, for when words become dissociated from life, life itself is lessened. Words of others just in the end become a voice and a potential shipwreck of misunderstandings. The traveller's Ulyssian peregrinations, traversing a variety of experiential sensations, turned from weeks to months. His wandering took him across cities growing each year like tree trunks, and swollen by hierarchies, through forests, across moors, up and down valleys, through cities decimated by pandemics, over mountaintops and through mosquito-infested swamps. He never tired of the freedom, the dominion of the possible that travel brought him. As he travelled, it became clearer to him that the world was chock-a-block with reference whose meaning had been misplaced. For example, some of the peoples he met along the way had lost their faith in God, or indeed in the gods. Their biographies had been blown away. And how can someone who only knows the material life understand what a soul is anyway? Having zigzagged the continents, the traveller returned, baptized by the beauty of that world, to that special quiet place, to the sweetness of exile, and that lost idea that you can create your own world entirely ab initio, the Sabbath of the memory. Everything seemed as if it had always been known, and yet it was just a new beginning. He was no longer beyond the world, but could hear the testimony of the pious, and was full of gratitude. He was happy in all things, seasoned by the hope of what is to become. The eve of ever greater graces seemed nigh. The chaff of his deeds had been mercifully blown away, and storms no longer kindled in the traveller's limbs. He dwelt in stillness. Canticles were being sung in a distant land. He might have returned home, left behind skies that afflicted the traveller's soul, the places where people speak so much they don't even understand the truths they reveal. But he understood very well that the road continues on and on. This is the spiritual way. And soon he would prepare for new beginnings, longing again for the unbeaten track. It was time to rest. The traveller closed his eyes, arresting the sequence of years, and felt the shape of his soul in the words that he uttered. He inhaled the transcendent grace and was in communion with the true light. He felt as noble as those blessed ones who had departed but stood around listening. A flicker of consciousness and sleep descended on the traveller. He passed through centuries of civilization and citadels of clay. Everywhere he went, he met people with songs of praise on their lips. They spoke arcane dialects of love and endowed their words with compassion. Their voices were velvety and hung in the wind, giving them a divine-like quality. The soft whisperings of the traveller's dreams could be heard everywhere.